Hello, second grade. Here we are, Ralph S. Mouse. See what happens with Ralph. The surprise. The next morning, Mr. Tanner reported to Miss Kay, and Miss Raquet reported to her class that no mice had been caught in Mr. Casa's traps. Yay! Cheered room 5. I told you so, said Ralph from the mitten thumb, but no one heard him. Miss Kay wrote a proper form of business letter instead of a friendly letter on the blackboard because the class was not planning to write friendly letters to the Cucaracha Voice. The class set to work, writing to the editor, explaining the story he had published about the mouse exhibit was not true. If someone had trouble spelling a word, that person asked Miss Kay about it. She then wrote the word on the blackboard in case someone else wanted to use it. Outrageous and ridiculous were the first words she wrote. She told Brad, "Yes, blockhead is one word, but can't you find a better way of expressing yourself?" Miss Kay promised to personally deliver the letters to the paper during her lunch period. No matter how many people spoke to him that day, Ralph refused to come out of his mitten, which fortunately already had an excellent peephole. He noticed Brad, who still had his arm in a sling, hand a note to Miss Kay, who handed it back to him with a nod and a big smile. He saw Ryan pass a note to Brad, and Brad pass a note back. Quite a busy bunch, thought Ralph. He was bored, much too warm, but he refused to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing him in his glass prison. When the long, miserable day ended, Ralph found himself being pulled out of the mitten by Ryan. "Come on, fellow, you're going back to the inn," he said. "And face all my relatives without my motorcycle?" squeaked Ralph. "No, thank you." "Relax. You can't live at school forever," said Ryan through his teeth, as he tried not to move his lips. "Trust me, everything is going to be all right. You'll see." Because Ryan kept his hand close around him, Ralph had no choice. He had to trust Ryan unless he bit him instead. He decided against doing so because Miss Kay said hurting people did not solve things. Ryan shoved Ralph into his pocket and closed the zipper all the way. Even so, Ralph was aware that something unusual was happening. Brad got on the school bus with Ryan after saying to the driver, "Here's a note from home." The two boys sat together. "Have you got it?" asked Ryan. "Yep," answered Brad, "right here in my pocket." "Got what?" Ralph wondered. "The remains of my motorcycle." "I've always wanted to ride in a tow truck," said Ryan. "That's easy," said Brad. "My dad'll give you a ride. He gets lots of calls up your way when the roads are icy, and he pulls a lot of cars out of Snowbank. Business is good this time of year." "I'll ask the cook if you can stay for dinner," said Ryan. "Wow, dinner in a hotel?" Brad was impressed. "We'll have to eat in the kitchen," Ryan explained. "Since the hotel's got a microwave oven, sometimes the plates are hot and the food isn't." "That's okay," said Brad. "My dad cooks mostly hamburgers and opens cans of beans." Then, lest Ryan not think him disloyal to his father, he added, "My dad makes good hamburgers, and on Sunday he cooks a steak. Sometimes, if he's really busy, I get my own supper. Then I have hot dogs." "You mean you stay alone?" asked Ryan. "I have Arfie with me," said Brad. "I wish I could get to stay alone with a dog," said Ryan. "I get tired of hearing the waitresses tell the cooks that the guests are complaining because the food isn't hot enough." Ralph resented being imprisoned by a zipper, and the conversation was boring because it was not about him. He thought about biting his way out, but he did not like the taste of nylon. Besides, the school bus was not a great place to hide. When the two boys got off the bus, Ralph heard their feet crunch through the snow. The inn was at a higher altitude than the town of Cucaracha, and the snow lasted longer. Then he heard their feet stomp up the steps, scratch the doormat, and enter the lobby. The old clock was still managing its familiar slow tick-tock. To Ralph, it sounded like an old friend. "Hello there, boys," said Ralph's protector, Matt. "Ryan, I'm glad to see you have a friend." So Matt had not lost his job after all. Then, as Ralph had hoped, the little mice must have been moved upstairs where they would be unable to taunt him about losing his motorcycle. Feeling more cheerful, Ralph began to jump around in the slippery pocket. "Let me out," he demanded. Ryan unzipped his pocket and lifted Ralph out, but held onto him. How good the lobby looked! A fire still burned in the old stove fireplace, and the grandfather clock and television set were right where they'd always been. One thing was different. The lobby was neater than Ralph remembered. Ashtrays were clean, and old magazines were arranged neatly on tables. The desk clerk ignored the boys, who did not stop to remove their jackets before they knelt in front of the clock. "Do you think it'll fit?" Ryan asked Brad. "We'll see in a second." Brad pulled something out of his pocket. "Wow, a Laser XL7, just like you said," breathed Ryan, as Brian set a miniature sports car on the floor and pushed it carefully through the highest part of the arch at the bottom of the clock. The car was low enough, if maneuvered by a skillful driver, to slip through. "See that, Ralph?" Ralph had seen it all right. The sleek, mouse-sized car with wire-spoked wheels and knockoff hubcaps was painted silvery gray, the right color for whizzing unnoticed through shadows. The broad, thick tires would stand up to the rough surfaces of carpet and make a wide splash through the puddles. The doors did not open, but the windows were big enough for a nimble mouse to climb through, and after all, racing car drivers did not open their door. Ralph was as squeakless at the sight of such a beautiful sports car. Why, with a car like that, he would no longer have to hang onto his tail to keep it from tangling in the spokes. He could just hop in and take off. "Come on, let's see you drive it." Ryan set Ralph down beside the little Laser XL7. Could he drive it? He'd show them. Ralph slipped through the window into a bucket seat, made sure his tail was safely inside, grasped the wheel, took a deep breath, and went p-p-p-p-p. The car did not move. Some noisy skiers came in from outdoors, but paid no attention to kneeling boys as they crossed the lobby. The boys crouched behind the couch until they had gone. "Silly," said Ryan. "That's your old motorcycle noise. You've got to make up a sports car noise to make a sports car move." "Stupid of me," admitted Ralph, who had been too excited to think straight. He took another deep breath, made his voice as low as a squeaky voice could go, and went vroom, vroom. The Laser began to roll across the floor. Ralph was driving. He was actually driving this beautiful sports car. He drove it straight into the leg of a couch where it stopped. Ralph vroomed again. The car did not budge. All right, we're going to stop there. So Ralph has a new car to replace his motorcycle. That is awesome. Have a great day. Bye. Have a nice weekend, too.